I just want to welcome everyone again, staff and board colleagues. Appreciate your time in leading into this work together. I know I've heard from people there's a little bit of trepidation, there's a little excitement, there's some curiosity about what we're going to do tonight. And this is an effort to bring staff and board together to strengthen the board's ability to prioritize our meeting agendas and our work plan, and to take a look at another look at our data, another look at our strategic plan and how we're going to monitor but not manage that plan. We're thankful to have Ben Cleveland here to help facilitate us tonight. And we're actually starting a little bit late, but we're going to still try to get out of here a little bit early, maybe just 10 or 15 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Great to see everybody. Thank you for having me back, and I'm excited to be with you tonight and get into some of the work together. Just your agenda's in front of you, so I won't recap that. In general, just given that we're starting 30 minutes late, I'm going to ask for your help in I'm going to try to move faster than was planned in pretty much every part of this agenda. I am going to try to conserve as much of the small group time as possible, though. But I'll need your help just to prioritize questions, and I'm going to keep moving. If you really need to ask me something, please do. But let's all just try to kind of be efficient.
And I was going to say we don't have we've got the agenda up there, but I think the norms are coming.
It's coming up. Yeah. So we have our norms here that we updated last time. I'm going to leave this with you in case you want to keep using it. But yeah, certainly welcome you to reflect on that as we go. I wanted to start out just with a little time to appreciate each other. I know it's been just a very long day, very long months. In the interest of condensing this, rather than have everyone show appreciation or compliment for the person on your right, like I was planning, why don't we just open this up free for all for about 10 minutes? But I think it'd be nice just to anyone that would like to share some praise or some appreciation for a colleague, just get us off to the right start. I was going to start, but go ahead, Mr. Green.
Okay. I just want to take a moment, and I know I didn't say it several times. People have heard me say it several times. We need to embarrass Jonathan because he worked like a 15-hour day on his birthday, focused on school stuff and dealing with the school closures and schools, going into this distance learning and answering questions and putting up with my ridiculousness on his birthday with a smile and enjoyed it, or at least looked like he enjoyed it. Probably, but I just need to look like, okay, good. But I just want to take a moment and really appreciate that. What it really speaks to and what I'm really pointing out is the commitment and dedication to trying to do what's best for the entire district, all of our kids, all of our families, and not just a few. And I really appreciate that, and it means a lot to me. And so I just want to pause and just say thank you. And I wanted everybody to sing happy birthday, but we're 30 minutes over.
I hope you got a do-over birthday, John.
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick, Julia?
Sure.
I wanted to just show appreciation for Dr. Adams, who I got to know a little bit virtually over the last couple months. And he's just been super gracious about giving me his time, even on the winter break, gave me some time to co-plan and think through, be a thought partner on this agenda, and just in the spirit of collaboration and partnership. And he didn't even know me, so I just really appreciate it. Before I continue to get to know you. Julie?
I have two. One is for everybody here, staff and board members, for showing up every day and sharing your passion for our students, our mission, and what we do. And I appreciate. Sometimes we don't always agree, but I really appreciate people bringing like their whole selves and what they what they care about and what they want to see in our students, and I believe it's excellent. So I really appreciate that, the whole group. And then I just want to share some appreciation for Michelle. I know how hard it is to be the chair of a board with 7 people who may have different experiences and different backgrounds, and different things they're passionate about and trying to keep us all moving together. So just appreciation for, I know the work to kind of keep things, us all together and moving forward in concert with staff leadership.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and appreciate the gentleman on the right. Just for modeling patience and perseverance, for working 7 days a week. Just really happy to sign off on 5 days altogether of vacation recently for the first time ever. I watch you when all this stuff is happening, and I get a lot from just watching how you handle it and what you focus on, which is kids, and your ability to tune out the noise. There's a lot of other things that could pull you away, and you've got a North Star and you stick to it.
I want to appreciate Dr. Proctor. Sorry, Amy was going to do you too, I guess, because she's first of all, I just want to thank you for coming here and stepping in as the Chief Academic Officer, and then stepping up to the plate to be Deputy Soup. And every time you speak, I feel like I get smarter. Because you are just like so incredible at explaining things, and it's clear that you have such a depth of knowledge and expertise, and I 100% want to be you when I grow up. Because you just are so student focused and just so knowledgeable and so ready to embrace all these wild challenges, and I'm just so grateful that you're here, and really appreciate all that you bring to our board meetings and all that you bring to the district. It's wonderful to get to learn from you.
Thank you.
You stole mine too, because I was going to say I'm so grateful that Dr. Proctor and Dr. Adams joined our team in the last several months. It's been huge additions, and you stepped into the fray and brought wisdom and expertise and just some fresh eyes on what we do. And thank you so much for taking over with us.
Thank you for that.
You're here.
Okay, I already did one, but I want to appreciate Claire. She's still here.
Yeah.
I mean, see you later, Portland, but this,
Thank
you know, your steady leadership during this time is really appreciated.
And she also found me a power cord. She does it all. She does it all.
And I'm noticing just in general of the appreciations, the calm presence of the leadership. It's calm, it's steady. I can say that for Dr. Proctor.
Well, you should sit in my office.
That's
just been clear.
That's a friend.
Normal.
Just watch his eyebrows. That's the clue.
I want to appreciate Terry. Something he gets a lot of appreciation.
Oh, man.
Thank you for making everything work, and we never recognize that or pay any attention to it, and except in the rare instance where something doesn't work, which then is certainly not your fault. But we appreciate you very much and all your support.
And I thank all your flexibility as I try and say, wait, not now, wait. Yeah, so everyone's been really helpful, so it's been easy. Thank you. I want to just thank our school-based staff for their diligence and their dedication to keeping our school environment safe. I mean, I think that doesn't go unnoticed by central office folks, and I think it's an important reminder that our school-based staff are what is keeping our schools open, and they're the reason our schools are safe.
Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I just go and say amen right there. I had an amen all in my spirit.
Amen.
I almost said I wasn't gonna say it out loud, but I guess I can say it. Amen.
How about one more?
Sorry, put the email
Right.
I wanted to thank all the board members. I know and volunteers that put a lot of time, all hours of the night, to people thinking about our students. And right now, I know if we have to be a board member and people get very easy targets, they feel pretty happy to email you their things up in the dark all the time. I see a lot of that. So I appreciate all of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Squeeze one more.
Yeah, go ahead. I thought you might have them. Go for it.
I also share the sentiment, our educators who continue to show up, committed to serving our students, our support staff. And I want to call out also our school principals, our school leaders, who continue to provide leadership in our school communities, who've been part of a lot of complex conversations and decisions, especially in the last couple of weeks, and they continue to just show up for kids, for their families, for their faculties. And so I have a deep appreciation for everybody's collective flexibility, commitment to try to all together get through this. That's the only way we can successfully and still stay focused on the main thing. Yes, we have a pandemic to deal with, but our real eye on the prize is raising the student achievement index. So I'm glad that we're spending another day, another evening talking about that focus.
Thank you for just jumping in on that. And I know, I can only imagine how hard all the jobs are. I mean, I've done work in schools and never in a pandemic. But I do know that a little gratitude can go a long way, especially in times of time. So thank you for grabbing on to that. Just want to kind of recap our objective for this evening is to try to strengthen the board's ability in partnership with the district leadership to stay focused on the most important matters of governance this year, including how best to measure and monitor, not manage, the board goals and the strategic plan objectives. The output, which is going to be primarily through the small group time, which I'm going to try to do my best to protect, is going to be a series of proposals of you all working together and rotating through different random groupings of you all to really dig in deep to a lot of the matters of business that you have in front of you. Consider ways to prioritize, modify, maybe even take some things off the plate. But I'm going to do the best I can to help facilitate some focus.
I want to also just say that, data tells us that when district administration and boards can work collaboratively, the outcomes are much better for students. We see that in other districts around the country. So when there's that collaborative relationship happening, we see better outcomes in those districts.
Absolutely.
So this is an exercise in collaborative monitoring.
Amen. Norms are up here. I won't recap them. I do want to, before we kick off, so which you'll see in a second, but what I'm going to dig into is some data that's primarily related to your board goals, to some extent to the strategic plan as well. But I requested that data originally back in September. Dr. Adams' position had not been filled yet. And now he's here. And so now we've kind of come together and I know now that there's some work in process that I wanted to give Dr. Adams a chance to preview before I do anything else. So Dr. Adams, you and
Thank you for that, Ben. Will you drive for me?
Yes. Yeah, let me put this link.
So I'll let you know when, and hopefully the links will open when we click on them.
Do you want the public-facing link?
Yeah, so I know there's been, rightfully so, great interest in the strategic plan, how it could be monitored, how we can know, how can the public know how the system is doing in regards to fulfilling the strategic plan. And so we have, as a team, partnered with a vendor partner that specializes in making strategic plans come to life and making them transparent and open to access by the public. And so what I want to share with you tonight is both a proof of concept or a wireframe, meaning these aren't real data that you're seeing. It's just a small snippet of the plan laid out into the strategic planning framework so that you can get an idea of what it will feel like when we're finally able to get the plan uploaded, get momentum and socializing it, and start monitoring and measuring it. So the first thing I wanted to show you was the wireframe for the public-facing dashboard. And so you see at the beginning, it talks about what a strategic plan is, and then it goes into our vision, mission statement, and our core values. Ben, if you could scroll for me, please. Just a little bit.
Jumped on me.
We see the right, great, that's perfect. Then you'll see the 4 themes of the strategic plan all will be noted visually with a graphic. Again, these are all placeholders. And under the racial equity and social justice theme, theme 1, you'll see we have some colored status indicators that have been placed here to give the public and you an idea of how we might be able to monitor it. Or well, not might be, but we will be able to monitor it. So first thing under racial equity and social justice is that blue to gray line, which would show and which would communicate that about 48%, because it's almost at 50, of the work in this part of the strategic plan is accomplished. Again, this is all at some point in time beyond today, not at this very moment, although we're working on bits and pieces. And then there's a status indicator with green being on track, yellow being behind schedule, but likely still to be okay, red being something that's at risk and we need to see if it may not happen or we need to make adjustments. And there's actually also a purple indicator to let people know this is work that we're going to do, but we haven't yet started it because we know we can't do everything at once. So we need to stagger out different key actions and activities in the strategic plan. As a public, as a member of the public, if you click on the racial equity and social justice picture, it then will display relevant data to that strategic plan theme. Here we talk about in the equity and racial equity and social justice, about narrowing opportunity gaps and about students saying that they belong more, they feel like they belong more in their schools and a part of their school community. And if you scroll down, we then have the strategic outcomes. Each of those will also have status indicators, and you can drill further into those if you click on just culture, the first one there, Ben, or the second. Then you get down to key actions that also will have status indicators. So someone will be able to have a copy of the strategic plan if they would want, with it all flagged out, which I know you all already have that, so I don't, with it all flagged and highlighted and circled and with your annotations. And then they could walk side by side through the web interface and see where we are in terms of the strategic plan and how we are doing in terms of progress toward all the things that are in there that we said we're going to do. In addition to the public-facing portion of the plan, we'll have an internal side to that allows us to internally monitor as a part of the superintendent's leadership team how progress is going towards. So you can see this is a wireframe. They don't have our PPS logo there. But if you just scroll down slowly, Ben, this will give you a feel for what the internal monitoring will look like as well. It again repeats the vision statement, the mission, the core values, then the themes, and you'll be able to jump around by theme, but if you just continue to scroll, a little bit more, past these data, as we see those. Then you'll see that key strategic actions will be noted, like how are we getting to this part of the strategic plan, how are we realizing these outcomes or the fruition of this initiative with their own actual indicators and progress meters, as well as highlights that staff will be able to enter issues and next steps. So this will be a cyclical type of performance management cycle that we'll do with the strategic plan. And our staff and teams will update this because it'll all cascade up from individual office and department work into the overall work of the strategic plan across the district. And so what I just wanted to do was have a brief opportunity to just let you all know this is work that we're committed to. It is work that we're actually working on when we're not in EOC. Trying to bring this plan to life for all of our stakeholders after, which we owe them that much after all the community engagement and time and input that they provided to us. And so I just wanted to give you sort of a preview of what that monitoring process and those tools would look like.
This is
So when would
fantastic.
you- It's really
It
good.
is.
When would you expect that public facing dashboard would be available?
What, Jonathan, do you have a
Ish.
better sense? Ish.
Yeah, I think we're finalizing, having a conversation with our vendors at the end of this month, I believe, and then I think it's gonna be a 4 to 6 week turnaround after that. So late February, early March is probably when we will upload all of this.
So I just want to caution us a little bit that the pandemic has interrupted this process, so I don't want to over-promise.
So we're hoping sometime in the spring.
Yeah, I was actually gonna take that from the other side, Claire, which is, so the superintendent noted this when he presented the strategic plan to the board, that we would be having something like this, and the fact that even during this crisis year, we're at this point is really
Yeah.
awesome. So, thank
Uh-huh.
you. We knew this was coming, but I didn't think we were gonna.
I don't know a lot of other institutions that are able to both navigate the pandemic like PPS has and continue to move forward.
Mhm.
And I think what you just said is really important to name, Andrew, that even in the midst of the EOC meetings, that we're still heading forward on these things. We haven't, I think what you said, Michelle, about superintendent keeping his eyes focused on student is very, very clear on the leadership at this moment.
Yeah, Director Laurie, I appreciate coming. I was gonna just comment and thank, I know, Director Remembrance and Chair Pass were at our innovation launch a couple weeks ago. And that's a part of our strategic plan, right? And so I think what's important to know is that even though the plan doesn't, I mean, I'll speak for our, like, as kind of one of the leads on the strategic plan, feeling like we haven't had a chance to fully share it out with our community, with our staff because of this pandemic, and feeling the need to like be thoughtful about presenting new ideas or new things. And so we've tried to navigate, all of our decisions around the strategic plan in a human-centered approach. And it's been difficult, right? Again, because we're so committed to this work and we know that the work in the strategic plan that is outlined will shift the paradigm for how this school district serves its Black and brown children in particular. And so to know that the work is moving forward, not as fast or as with determination as we would want to, as the superintendent and I were just talking about that this morning, if the pandemic wasn't in front of us, how much more would we be ahead? And so, our public dashboard is really, as you pointed out, Director Lowry, we said this from the beginning, right? We shared this with each of you, that there is a public dashboard coming because we know the importance of transparency and to share with the broader community the importance of the work over the years. So I just want to appreciate that.
When I get really maudlin and depressed, I think about February of 2020 and sort of this trajectory we were on. We had the SIA money. We were beginning to see some of these things bearing fruit. Some of the strategies that the superintendent and the staff had put in place were beginning to gain ground. And it felt like we were on the cusp of some really great changes for PBS. And then the pandemic came and obviously everything got pushed back. So it's very, very heartening to see this and to know that even though it wasn't maybe in the timeline we originally thought it was going to be back in February of 2020, that this is still coming.
I want to make a quick plug for this innovation studio, which is a human-centered design process. I was really impressed by the amount of work that came out of Camille's office, and would encourage the other board members to attend those sessions. There's one this Saturday. It's a 3-hour session, but the innovation that's happening at the early childhood level is remarkable. I felt very hopeful after sitting through that session. So there's a Saturday session, and then there's one in early February, I believe, or end of January. I would encourage Camille to send invites out again. I think it's really important work that's happening.
Awesome. I definitely should you.
I think the Innovation Studio is a good example of high-performing school systems have model learning organization traits. And one of those is to take problems of practice and open them up to the educators and adults in the school system to say, we wanna investigate this, and we have sponsorship to be creative about it, and they're all grounded in the student graduate profile outcomes that we want to see. I appreciate the remarks folks are making. You don't see a lot of examples around the country, especially now, where you can see a through line if you can stay consistent between board goals, very bold theory of action focused around Black and Native students, a vision of the broad community spent a year co-constructing, a strategic plan that transparently calls out what administration is going to do to make that vision true, and then a way to monitor it, and then to engage in regular cycles of data and indicators and key performance indicators as they come available. That is the work of a high-performing organization. And our anxiousness is to really get going on this. We haven't been able to mobilize the full breadth of certainly central office leadership. None of this work is departmental. It's all interdepartmental. And it requires us to work differently to get different kinds of results, the kind of counter narrative that we talk about in our vision and our strategic plan. So we're hopeful that we'll begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel of this pandemic and crisis, so we can really launch into socialize and really start digging in. So you can start seeing progress, and it's a helpful management tool, but it's also helpful to bring transparency for the broader community about where we're spending our resources, time, energy, and stuff.
I think one of the things you said there that's key at the end is about, the management piece of having this accountability structure, both, particularly that internal monitoring, Dr. Adams, that you showed us. And one of the things I know you're wonderful at, Guadalupe, is continuing to adjust, right? What are we actually seeing from the data? We can have this great plan, but if we're not seeing it bear fruit, we have to adjust our strategies, and that's something I know you do often. So I know a lot of other organizations have like the strategic plan and the things, but to have the transparent accountability dashboards really help us actually live into making sure this is a reality. So I think, like you said, Superintendent, this is not something we see in lots of other places around the country. And so to have that from beginning to end, this way to really commit to make this happen for PPS is very inspiring.
Question. Thank you, Dr. I love dashboards that are that's my, well, because I do think it allows.
What did I say, Dr. Adams?
And right, Julia, color coding is also
because I think it allows for effective monitoring versus getting into the managing. Because I think it allows you to like go through and just at a very high level look to see what things are on track or not. My question is, and I'm sorry, but I couldn't read the slide as it was moving at the same time. So my question is, so you have these pieces of work and then the alignment. So is it that, is the ultimate like on track to meet the board goals, and therefore, so for example, if all your indicators were green, you would be hitting your board goals, or is it aligned to something else?
The on-track indicators are aligned to the work as outlined in the strategic plan, because we believe that implementing the strategic plan then gets us to the board goals. And so it would be my hope, my expectation, that as we see more green in the strategic plan, we see progress and success with the board goals.
So you're monitoring the activities, and then the board goals is monitoring the outcomes from those activities.
Sure, and what this will take is us as a district from the classroom level up to the central office level, embracing a cycle of continuous improvement. Plan, do, study, act, adjust as Director Lowry mentioned, as needed, because that's what we'll need to do.
So I'm glad you did that, because I think sometimes activities can be monitored, and I mean, you can do activities, but it doesn't necessarily, and be on track of implementing them, but it doesn't necessarily get to your goals. So from a sense of alignment, your wireframe, and again, I just I can't process 2 tracks at one time. The wireframe would have that linkage to the board goals that have been set.
That will certainly be in there, yes, because those are also embedded in the strategic plan.
So Julie, I appreciate your question. We're actually going to spend a little bit of time on this summary document of the strategic plan, including indicators that were developed as part of it, which you'll see when we get to that are inclusive of 4 goals and also have some additional goals that the staff has set related to the 4 themes. And so I'm encouraging the board to learn about those and consider monitoring certainly 4 goals as a priority, but also consider, I'm going to share some data that isn't directly part of the 4 goals, but is related to the strategic plan. So that's very much part of the topic. I just want to quickly independently verify, as someone who works at different school boards around the country, that you're absolutely right, Mr. Superintendent. Can't think of too many, of any probably districts that have this robust of a platform for a vision and a strategy and an implementation plan, and then a way to measure, which so kudos, and it's clearly a strength to your leadership. So I'm going to get into the data that I had requested again way back in September. Dr. Adams and his team was gracious enough to update with the fall of 2021 map data when relevant. I want to preface this by saying anything that I'm sharing, whether it's related to this data, the 4 goals, or the strategic plan, is simply a contribution and an input, not meant to supersede or supplant or interfere with this process that's underway. So it's really just meant to be a contribution of ideas and things to consider as that process continues to unfold. For some reason. In your policies, there's the racial educational equity policy, and I kind of use this as one guidepost. There's 2 elements to it. We're going to kind of touch on both in terms of data. First one being narrowing the gaps between the lowest and highest performing students in the district. I know you all, and I watched the meeting from December when Dr. Adams presented his data on fall 2021 map. I just want to make clear kind of how what I'm about to share is in addition to and supplemental to that data. Some of this data, depending on how you look at it or how you splice it, can share different parts of the story. And also, I'm hopeful that some of the things I'm going to present are responsive to some of the questions I heard during that meeting as well. But we'll go ahead and dig in. I want to start by this is a little bit of a just basic kind of definition and glossary. I'm going to talk about both SBAC, the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium with the Oregon State exams, and MAP. And I'm going to assume that if you don't work in education or you're a new board member, like maybe some of this is informational. The 2 tests are useful, but have different purposes. The SBAC is criterion reference, meaning it measures students learning against standards, grade level state standards of content to be mastered. Whereas MAP is norm reference and measures performance against other test takers. So you typically will hear the percentile rank, meaning, of course, that if you're the 50th percentile, you're performing better than 50% of the test takers. Administered by PPS in both instances, there is some extra independent monitoring. I'm not super familiar with how extensive this is, but I believe there is some state monitoring from time to time. Once per year, whereas MAP is administered, as 3 times per year internally. Directly aligned to state standards, SBAC is the state exam. MAP is not, but highly correlated, as I'm about to show you. Aligned to the actual state accountability system and federal ESSA plan, the Every Student Succeeds Act, so the federal accountability standards. SBAC is typically used for that and not MAP. Again, not to say one's better than the other, they're just different. Different score reporting, and both have growth components, but SBAC compares growth to other students who have similar profiles, academic history, and so sets like targets that the growth is measured against, whereas MAP will compare growth to other students taking the test. Any quick questions on that, or is that?
I have a question for the superintendent, or maybe Dr. Adams. I thought we only did MAP twice a year, and the third one was SBAC.
There are at the younger grades, that what we did is we made a commitment to not over-assess students. So students in grade levels that take SBAC do not take math in the spring. Students in grade levels that do not take SBAC, so we have some second graders, for example, that will take it in the spring to give us a third data point.
Okay, so everybody gets 3 data points. It just sometimes maybe 3 maps, and sometimes it's 2 maps in one.
That's that.
Okay, thank
Got
you.
it. I wasn't aware of that either, so that's helpful. Thank you.
I would also add, aside from the alignment to the accountability system, it's actually a requirement for the state of Oregon in order to receive its federal agencies. So
Right.
which triggers it down to school systems.
Yep, thank you. So to prove the point that there is high correlation between the two, these charts show you actual 2019 data between your administration of MAP internally and the students who took, the Portland Public School students who took SBAC. And so the gold line is SBAC, the blue bars are MAP, and you can see very closely track each other in terms of percent proficiency. So like the MAP data is predicted. Quick backtrack, NWEA, which is the national company that develops MAP, studies state by state the correlation between their state tests and performance on MAP, and they developed state-specific thresholds for the RIT score that they've researched best correspond with proficiency. So each state has its own like kind of way of translating, but Oregon seems to have done a pretty good job. And worth noting, almost in every instance, MAP is on the conservative side, so it tends to predict slightly lower proficiency than the state exam, which is ideal from a leadership perspective, right? You'd rather know that kids are going to maybe do a little better than the data showing you, certainly not the other way. Next 2 charts, so then take that was sort of proof of concept, but over time, so this is longitudinal, which I think was a question that came up in December. The math administrations that were done, you'll see some gaps because it wasn't always done in the midst of the pandemic every single time like it normally would have been. Participation rates along the bottom here, so you can see that varies quite a bit. But this was the projected reading SBAC proficiency at each of those points in time.
Wasn't it new to PPS in fall of 2018? Like we rolled it out across the district starting in fall of 2018?
That seems about right.
Yeah, so that's why it was lower participation, because it was an extended roll.
Got it. Helpful context. Thank you.
And then pandemic.
Yeah, thank you. I think what's interesting is, and you'll see this trend in several of these charts, you see some evidence of a dip, particularly for students of color in this last administration, but at the same time, one of the highest participation rates yet. And so it's a little difficult to tell, how much of this is pandemic related and how much of it is whether or not those increased participants may have historically been lower performing. There's really no way to know. Maybe there's some combination.
What is the data nationwide saying? Because you just said we can't tell if this dip is pandemic related, but what I've heard is that nationwide, what we're seeing is data, especially for kids of color, has dipped significantly due to the pandemic. And Washington State just came out with their assessment data today, and it's a significant decline.
Yeah.
Is that, what are you hearing, Dr.
That is
Adams?
what you see. Lots of the larger assessment companies, NWA being one of them, Curriculum Associates, which makes the iReady assessment being another, have put out analyses that compare pre-pandemic achievement and growth to intra-pandemic.
Because we're still in it, yeah.
So since the pandemic, achievement and growth, and are seeing declines, right? So there were already gaps between and among student groups and large gaps between students of color and their white peers, and then performance has dropped more so for students of color, creating larger gaps.
I know it doesn't alleviate us of any of the responsibility that we have to live into our goals, but I do think it's helpful to note that these kinds of declines are things that are being seen nationwide, and it's not unique to PPS. It is a problem that we need to address, but it isn't ours alone.
Absolutely.
Well, we saw that data side by side in Dr. Adams' presentation.
Yeah,
Ours
Dr. Adams did share.
was not as persistent.
I don't mean to say there wasn't a pandemic related learning loss. All I'm pointing out is that this is kind of a unique scenario for the district in terms of the participation rate changing. So it's just something to be cautious of. Let me just say in general too, I'm going to share a lot of data. I'm going to try to go pretty quickly. Not because I'm trying to gloss over it, but because my intent here is just simply to share some ideas around different ways of looking at the data and measuring and monitoring. managing, with the hope that you would then figure out which parts of this you might like, and then follow up later for a deeper dive with the team who really can explain it. So if I don't, I'm not saying don't ask questions, but it's more meant to be kind of pretty high level.
I just like to note so that it gets captured in the notes that we're saying NWEA
Not NWA.
Yes.
and not NWA because
Yeah.
in my community it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
When you say NWA, and we didn't know that they did data like this.
They did it.
So I just wanted to point that out for anybody listening because I have been asked
No.
abroad.
I don't know what I should have put that as a footnote. I don't know what I was saying. Similar picture in terms of math, but this is a general trend throughout. The absolute levels of performance for all groups are significantly lower. And also just note that these 0 values are suppressed data, so they're somewhere between 0 and 11, they're not 0. But this shows that despite the increased participation, fairly consistent levels, especially for the student groups, really for all the student groups in math for 3 to 8 combined.
It's important to note that when we were first introducing the math assessment and that participation rate, even though it says 38% in 2018 fall, we started rolling this out in our larger schools. So our federally identified CSI, TSI schools, they were the ones who were modeling and breaking ground on these assessments. So they've had a little bit more experience in trend data as a result. Because they're making greater use of it, have been making greater use.
Yeah, that makes full sense. I want to share again some data related to the format, the board goals. The board goals. Just I think you know them pretty well, but just to recap. Board goal number 1 around increasing percent of underserved students of color meeting their MAP growth expectations. This is probably the toughest data to track just due to lack of statistical significance. You'll notice the number with actual growth results here for reading is pretty low. In comparison, the actual test takers were more in 700, 800, 900, but
Is that any growth or that's meeting the growth expectation?
meeting the growth expectation. I'm just pointing out these are pretty small groups compared to the whole population because you have to have at least 2 intervals to compare to, right? And so there's probably some mobility there. So just take it for what it is. It's probably not the most reliable as it could be, but at least gives you some sense maybe of the trend.
Hey, just while I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
well, my question is actually of you. So when we created our board goals, we really struggled with, pinning a particular growth expectation on, because of course you want to be aspirational, but you also want to be pragmatic from a data science perspective. So that was under Dr. Brown's tenure. So I'm just curious your take on these and whether it is a reasonable growth expectation.
So with using an assessment like MAP, one of the things that is challenging is that it is norm reference, so it follows that normal bell curve. And so when you set a target, what you're really trying to do is shift that entire curve in a particular direction so that more students are performing as we would expect them to. What that looks like in a target is something like 65%, which is a significant push. I've seen elementary schools in previous districts where I've worked that have gotten to like 75% during an administration. I mean, that is significantly moving students along, right? But the problem is, when we think about goals, we like to think about numbers like 80, 95, 100%. Those don't really work with a norm reference test. Those work with a criterion reference test like SBAC, where you say you want 100% of the students to meet their proficiency targets. And one of the things we know is that one of the things that researchers told us is when we focus on only criterion reference achievement, what some schools may do is they may focus on a bubble group of kids and not necessarily focus on the kids that they know are going to do well or the kids that they know are not going to do well, and they'll focus on like the bubble group. With MAP, what we're asking is that every student should show growth instructionally with an effective teacher over the course of a school year, regardless of where he, she, or they start. Because we want everybody to meet their growth targets, and we actually want our students that are further behind to exceed their growth targets so they can begin catching up.
And I think that's why math is so works for the kind of gap closure we're looking for.
Board goal number 2. Oh, I'm having trouble saying board goals. Increasing the percentage of underserved students of color meeting 5th grade math growth expectations. This is in math, 5th grade. A little bit better sample set, so probably more reliable, but unfortunately not, and this is probably another pandemic related dip here, but unfortunately not yet headed in that right direction.
Math really took a hit during the pandemic. I mean, that's what we've seen with the data is math was way harder on distance learning.
Absolutely.
And if you've seen sample assessment items, like we backmapped in another life from the SAT down to this data assessment, and we showed everyone an 11th grade SAT math problem, and it was 95% words. And so if you're having reading difficulties as a student, when you go then to approach your mathematical problem solving and reasoning, that those reading difficulties get exponentially multiplied when you try to address math problems, because it isn't what we call naked math anymore, where it's just sort of an equation and you're plugging and playing.
And again, I just want to reiterate, these are the kinds of conversations I would totally encourage you to have in board meetings. We don't have to have them all tonight. But they're good questions, and certainly appreciate the responses too.
As we go into this one, I just want to point out that our SBAC proficiency is our placeholder measure, that our long-term goal is to do a portfolio for 8th grade students tied to our graduate portrait, but that is coupled to our middle school redesign. So this is sort of a, for right now, while we work on all the other things.
Got it. This is your 3rd goal, meeting proficiency in both ELA and math, both exams. Shows you where we are. Similar trends. Dr. Adams shared this in December, but you've met the goal, so I just want to share it again for some good news. So this is great. Definite progress for students meeting at least one of these indicators of more advanced coursework generally. At the same time, we see quite a variation when we drill one layer down in different student groups, with Black and Pacific Islander students struggling the most to meet that mark. So I just thought it was important that even though the group of underserved students of color is meeting the goal, there are some who are exceeding and some who aren't quite there.
It's interesting. Native.
What's that?
That native figure there's interesting.
Yeah, quite a bit of progress there.
Our native data, our Pacific Island data, those are usually really small student counts, so it can vary. A shift of 1 to 5 students can totally change the percentage that you see.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, there are some, especially with Native Americans and Pacific Islander students, the groups are pretty small.
Some of the trends a couple slides ago on the SBAC 8th grade administered just as this pandemic was starting in spring 2020. If you go back 1 or 2. This one, for example, and 13 to 20% was, beginning to show.
Growth.
That 50% more growth, like 7%. That's huge.
That's huge.
And then the pandemic.
There's a couple charts you'll see where that spike is evident for sure.
This is why I want to go back to February of 20.
This is, I know not your board goal, but I think it's relevant, just context. Achieving advanced coursework is certainly research-based that, like indicators of future success, but also important, I think, to understand how much content is being mastered. And so this is 1920 only, just because that was the only one where we had more than 60% participation rate. Participation rates were a little low in the other years. But just for a snapshot, this gives you a sense of what percentage of students in 11th grade were achieving the College Board's college-ready benchmarks for ELA, for reading and writing. And so what that means is these students, to meet that mark, you're likely to have a 75% chance of earning at least a C in a first semester English-related course. So again, just ideas and food for thought in terms of things you might want to consider monitoring, even though they're maybe not explicitly a board goal, but might help give you information and that is so important to monitor and understand.
And I think as we look at, places like the UC system is not using the SATs anymore because of the racial
Totally.
bias in them. So I
Yeah.
think it's, again, a data point that comes with that larger narrative.
It is, and it's certainly right. I meant to say that becoming less and less important in terms of college admissions. We're certainly worth noting. Similar trends on math for SAT. This is 75% chance of hitting a C in first semester math courses. And then a different test, which will continue to be relevant unless they change it, is the proficiency rates on the SBAC 11th grade ELA. So I wanted to share this with you as well.
I think what we can also learn from SAT, even if colleges aren't using it, understanding that bias exists within all of us and all of our constructs that we create. These tests at the 11th grade give us an idea of students' academic preparation over the course of their time with us. And so when you see that huge dip for Black and brown students, that is not something that just showed up in 11th grade. That's been building since kindergarten, which was sort of what I was trying to not beat you over the head with in the December data dive, but this idea that it compounds over time and shows up at 11th and 12th grade like this.
Well, we see that in the 13% goal around math in 8th grade. That's this then showing up later, those same in the SAT score, right? That we see that correlation, absolutely.
And then we've seen a very big, I should say very big, we've seen significant drops when we shift from ELA to math throughout. Maybe none as significant as this.
Wow.
And particularly stark that less than 5% of Black students are proficient grade 11 math in 1819, which is the last time this discussed.
When did we, as a board, set these goals? So the board goals that we keep referring to, when were they set?
2019, fall of 2019.
Fall of 2019. So after the pandemic.
Well, the pandemic
Pandemic started,
It was
it
winter
hit
of
us on in March of 2020 is when everything started shutting down.
Yeah, it's about
And
6
when we
months.
saw the predictors that it was coming, we didn't know quite what it was in like late 19.
December, in 19.
Yeah,
But we
so-
set these in
So
September,
this was done in
October,
September, so this would have been,
before.
prior to, we saw the predictions that
Yeah.
this pandemic was coming. And
We were full of hope for this.
full of hope. So at no point did we ever come back to say, we set these goals to say, we're gonna have this done by 2022. Cause I keep looking and it says that we wanna see this increase by this time, 2022. And I don't see it happening
Well, I think that,
realistically. I'm optimistic and I trust me, I always see things on the glass is always going to be half full. I can always find the silver lining, you give me time, but realistically, I don't want to lie to nobody, show them this and say, yeah, but no, that's a straight lie. It is not going to happen. And
Oh, yeah.
Are
No,
you
it's not gonna
suggesting
happen.
we might revisit?
I'm just trying, that's why I was asking the question around, when did we set it? And at what point did we decide, or we need to decide, we need to revisit these goals because if we ain't doing this, it's not realistic. It's not a realistic expectation. And we need to set a new goal. And so that we actually have something that becomes actually achievable, because this is not, and you see, every slide, every slide has been a problem with me. Every single slide, I don't care how you slice it, it did not start now. This has been going on for a long time. And COVID only exposed what we as Black people already knew was a deafening problem that had been impacting our community for decades. And so it's time to do something different.
Well, so that's what, so we knew as we went into the pandemic that those goals were going to be set. We didn't have the data. That was the big challenge because we didn't do testing during the pandemic. And that's frankly what we've been talking about for the last year and a half is when are we going to have the data to know what the baseline is so we can reset those goals and be realistic. Again, be aggressive about the goal, but also be realistic when they're needed. And that is exactly what
Oh, I'm not trying to make it easy goal. I don't think that at all.
No,
That's exactly what we need to be doing
We
right
need to
now.
push hard, but at the same time, we need to be realistic about the push. I'm not gonna tell my grandson that, you know what I'm saying, here are the keys, you can drive, take this car, I got it for you. That's stupid. I'm the fool. You know what I'm saying? That's not gonna happen. It's not realistic. But I can go get him that little push car. And you know what I'm saying? One day you'll be able to drive this. And so I can go get him a little Rolls Royce push car, or I can go get him a little Range Rover push car. And I'll say, one day you'll actually be able to drive one of these. But you gotta start here with realistic expectations. So push it until you can drive it. We need some realistic expectations is all I'm saying. I don't wanna make it easy for anybody. I don't wanna give anybody a pass. I mean, a rubber band only works if it's being stretched. And so what I want to do is create a rubber band system that you have to stretch it in order for it to work. Otherwise, it's just a piece of material.
And I think, we went from the, sorry.
Oh, yeah, can you see, I was like, so our work as a board is to do exactly that, which is why we're here in this room tonight.
What I was gonna point out is our goal was to go from 40%, because we knew that's where we were on math, to 60% over 3 years, and we had sub-goals that Russ and Dr. Brown and Guadalupe set us, and we're gonna grow 3% here, 10% here, 7% here, and then the pandemic came. So what we need to do is figure out where we are, because we're not at 40% anymore, and then we need to say, we're gonna grow 5% this year, and we're gonna go all in on resources to make that happen. I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. That's what we had before, but we paused with the pandemic because we didn't have the data. And so now we're coming back to say, we've got to reset those metrics. The goals are staying the same of third grade math, third grade reading, fifth grade math, middle school and high school, but it's those what are the percentages and how do we, and then like, Ben said at the beginning, we're going to have to make some really hard decisions of what we're going to let go of as a board. Because if we're serious about closing the achievement gap, if we're serious about making these goals, we can't be distracted by the other stuff we get into the weeds on.
The perfect segue to what we're about to get into.
Thank you.
Let me just say that I can't agree with all the comments more, but I just want to just balance it with, I'd be willing to put money on the superintendent and his team and all the educators in the schools are going to work just as hard, regardless of whether you set the goal at 57 or 59. So just to put it in context, I think it's important, certainly, to have good, ambitious, realistic goals, but what's also important is knowing what we're doing about it, like how, what are the actions and activities and the progress being made, which is the primary purpose of the strategic plan. So I just want to encourage both. And the goals can oftentimes become rabbit holes to try to perfect, and they'll never be perfect.
I can really appreciate Director Green's strong reaction because I have it too, and I appreciate the passion and the urgency that he feels because we feel it. And you're right, the goals are one thing, set a performance metric, and it's because I think this variability that you see in most urban school districts, it's reflective of the organization's focus over time, where it's divestment in doing the right work. And so when I hear you say, Director Green, we got to do something different, what we have proposed all along is doing something different means having a curriculum. It means having an instructional framework. It means having a balanced assessment system. It means engaging in continuous improvement and aligning your resources accordingly. And if we do those building blocks, then we have some confidence that we will start to see the needle move and those bar graphs not continue to look the way that they continue to look. And when districts do that, you see that kind of movement.
Yeah, and the converse is true as well. When you don't have a standards aligned curriculum, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see if you're going to make any progress year by year.
Right. And when I say all those things, of course, we have to attend to who we're talking about, right? And that's a theory of action. So you can have an instructional framework, but it's got to be culturally responsive and sustaining. It's got to take into account who are we actually trying to meet the needs of and serve and support. So there's that added context and differentiation also, and what does an equitable approach and support look like, because our communities are not all the same, as you know, and there's a particular set of them where we have to create a different approach to get the counter narrative we all want to see.
And again, the data show that the more we can align the work of the district with the work of the board will result in better outcomes because the board is focused on what matters, not on a lot of other noisy, distracting detailed work.
And we saw glimmers of hope there with that little spike in 20 and then with the high school stuff. I mean, there is some progress being made.
This can absolutely happen. And I don't mean to cut this conversation off. You're demonstrating excellent governance right now. I mean, this is, as your consultant, this is what I'm encouraging you to do. We just only have so much time tonight.
I have a question that kind of, that's on my mind. So with all the stuff that you guys say we need, what do we actually have right now? So I'm just like, how are we going from here on? So with all the things that, that you talked about, we need to have. Out of those things that we have, what things do we need? So that way we can get to the implementation point, because like, I see the plan, the do, study, it seems like we've done all that. Now it's the activity. So out of the things that you identified, what do we have? What do we need? And so that way I think we should be able to set our agenda based on if it's other things we need. If not, we need to be basing our agenda based on the implementation phase.
Yeah, and look, I love to play the deputy superintendent role, but I won't steal your thunder. I love that role.
Right.
If those were building blocks that were missing, say, in elementary math, and now we've steered resources
Right.
to the voters to accelerate curriculum adoption, and now we have an elementary math adoption. We've sort of eliminated the absence of it, and so now we've got to support our educators and our school leaders towards implementing that curriculum with fidelity. And then support our educators with coaching and collaboration time around how to implement that curriculum to meet the needs of the learners in front of them, via universal design and the rest. And then, the assessments will give us a lot to talk about, but you should begin to see signs of progress where we put those pieces in place. So, you should expect to see them at the elementary level, and it'll start to move for African American and Black students. So, and as they cascade up, and we start aligning our math course sequence, then that hopefully will start to cascade its way up. But, and it's not just our observations and our collaboration with our school leaders and the academic conversations we have. We're also validating and checking ourselves with third-party audits to validate, we're observing this, does this seem, so Dr. Proctor can tell you about some of those recent audits and reports we've received, and they're confirming our observations, and so we're on the right track as far as our roadmap. We should expect to see movement where we're investing time and energy.
Right.
So, just to give you an example. If you want to explain.
Yeah, so definitely we, in the absence of adopting curriculum, we, as Superintendent Burrow says, that we have a elementary math, we have our pre-K to implementation of foundational skills for instruction in ELA using Hagerty and also foundations. But now we're in the adoption process of full curriculum, where in some contents it had not happened in over 20 years here at PPS. So when you don't have curriculum, that means you don't have a district adopted set of texts, resources, materials for teachers to use to provide instruction. That means you have teachers who are pulling together the best they can resources and materials to create an instruction in a classroom setting. Now that we are in the process, we are in a full cycle of curriculum adoption. We will have for implementation next year a full K-12 ELA curriculum. We will have 6-12 math curriculum. And when the Office of Teaching and Learning did our instructional reviews with NTC, which is the New Teacher Center, we found clear evidence evident in classrooms, in instructional practice, in reviewing materials, resources, in looking at data, and in doing equity walks about what was happening in the school setting, and it fully aligns.
But
So-
you found evidence of what?
that there was no curriculum, that there was no consistent curriculum that was being used in middle years, for example. There's no consistent materials or resources that's currently being used in the high school setting. You know, and again, I'll be happy to share out with that. But those are some of the things that we're doing. We're in the process now of building an instructional framework, and the purpose of an instructional framework is to answer the question of what does good teaching and learning look like here at PPS? What do we want it to look like? And to create a common language and framework by which teachers would be trained and developed in the implementation of a set of instructional practices that are proven to bring about higher student engagement, higher rigor, and increased outcomes for student learning. So just with the curriculum piece and the curriculum adoption piece, just with the creation and then implementation of an instructional framework, you will see more aligned practices. And with more aligned practices, you will see more equity. And when you see more equity and equitable practices in instruction, then ultimately the through line is to see increased outcomes. How do you know that you'll see these increased outcomes? It will be through a balanced assessment approach to know exactly which assessments we're going to put in place to measure for implementation and also for student outcomes. As we move through a continuous improvement process, often we go from setting a goal to wanting to look at the outcome, right? And we don't spend time looking at what strategies we said that we were going to put in place, as we name specific strategies here for you today. And we often fail to monitor the implementation. We go from strategy and then want to look at the outcome. But if we don't monitor the implementation just as much as we monitor for the actual outcome, then there'll be an implementation gap. And if there's an implementation gap, you're still not going to have the result that you're looking for. So we could adopt all the curriculum in the world, but if we're not actively in schools and my team is not actively monitoring and supporting and coaching and training and developing teachers on how to fully implement and enact curriculum, then again, there'll be another misstep and a misfire.
The more defined PPS is about its way of work, the easier and the greater clarity we can have in the way we support, supervise our school leaders, the way we work with our higher education institutions around teacher preparation and school leadership programming, because we can point to what it is, what is the skill set, the knowledge base that we need our leaders and our future educators to have. They can enter the school system better prepared, and we have an apparatus to support their ongoing growth along the way, and our conferences and our professional growth plans will reflect those priorities. And so the system begins to perpetuate that way of work, and that's when we start to see acceleration.
But we also still have, for all that progress, we also still have barriers, structural barriers that we need to be bold about addressing, like we're gonna have to do things differently to get different results. And maybe so far, other than, budget decision-making and putting curriculum in the bond and things like that, which are huge, we've been sort of nibbling around the edges, but we're gonna have to be.
So Amy, and I had something I was gonna say, but actually I think you need to name what you just said. You just talked.
We have a contract
What do we need
that
to do?
prevents us from doing some things that we need
We need
to
to
do.
change the contract so that
Yes.
we can put the best teachers in the school where we need them,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That's one.
Chief among them and other things too.
Probably
Yes.
5 or 6 others, but I think as a board, we need to
Yes.
start naming what those things
Yes,
are.
thank you.
Start
Yeah.
doing it, right? Because I think we sort of politely pour them all
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So Dr. Proctor, I appreciate what you just said, and I'd love for you to expand maybe on the implementation gap. What does that look like in schools and, in real time? So we're developing a strategic plan centrally.
Yeah.
Walk us through what the
Yeah.
implementation gap looks like.
So implementation gap, for example, is where we've adopted K-5 math curriculum. And earlier on, when I first arrived in visiting schools and August, September, October, I saw inconsistent practice of actually teachers using the curriculum. So for example, if the district adopts a curriculum and we provide that curricular resource to schools, and we train and develop teachers in how to utilize that curriculum, yet, whether we as an office or principal leaders in their work of supervising instructions and being instructional leaders in their buildings, if there's not a comfort level of teachers in actually using the curriculum, if they are just not using the curriculum because they will fall back on what they've always done. And what, I've always pulled together my own resources and this is what I know to do, and I'm not familiar with how to use this text. Or part of one of the findings that we had is that even with in the cases where there was increased utilization of the K-5 math curriculum, that it was not aligned to the standards, right? That the level of rigor in the instruction was not at a heightened level to meet the grade level expectation. Those are specific examples of implementation gap. We have the intention of a strategy, we say we're gonna implement it, and it's not being implemented to fidelity, right?
I appreciate the example, and I think to cut this off, this sounds like a perfect opportunity to have a deeper dive.
Right.
Just want to keep this on track so we can.
Sure.
So what I'm also going to just encourage everyone generally, that if you have questions like you just did, Mr. Holmes, that maybe we don't have a ton of time to get into tonight, we're going to have a chance during the small groups to actually suggest some potential future agenda items. This sounds like one we're not doing. And certainly it's important information for the board to understand. So again, don't mean to cut it off, but there'll be an opportunity to keep it on the agenda tonight.
And I think we as a board need to figure out how we're going to come together and have these types of conversations. Because to me, coming together, to me, this is team building. When we're sitting down and we're talking about what is it going to take for us to do what we need to get done, and let's stop playing these games. I hate coming to meetings where we're just coming to a meeting. It disgusts me. I need us like, what are we going to do? Like, so, how are we going to come together? What do we need to do? What does it need to look like? And then now let's go out and do it, right? So we need to figure out how, as a board, team, staff, whatever, where we're going to come together, and then this is how our meetings are going to be guided. And so we're gonna need a lot more of that. That's all I'm saying, in order to get us through this pandemic, get us to hit our goals the way that we want to hit our goals. We gotta have, maybe because of public meeting laws, whatever, I don't know, that's what y'all do. But y'all need to figure out how to get us together so we can have these meetings and we can talk about the stuff that we need to talk about, and not just go through these boring agendas that aren't really hitting on the issues that we really need to be hitting on. We're dancing around stuff, as what, Director Scott was saying, is we're nibbling around the edges. And then let's just call it out. And then she knows exactly what needs to be called out, so she calls it out. Dr. Proctor knows exactly what needs to be done. Just say it. Just stop all the BS. Just say it. It is what it is, and let's move on. And that's what we need to do. We need to figure out how to get it done and stop playing these games, because this is.
I know Ben wants to move on, but I'm going to say even further on your point that, I mean, one of the things I've sort of heard, the superintendent say is that he's nervous that the board may not be willing to support the most controversial things that he thinks we need to do to improve the performance of our faculty.
I live for controversy.
I think one thing, we gotta know what those are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'm exactly. Is give us a chance and actually be willing to not only put it on the table, but put it on the table in that framework. That you know what, we're each 7 board members. We're going to come do it individually. We're going to vote how we vote. But I want to know from the superintendent and his staff, if you decide to go a different direction, you are making it harder for me to achieve these board goals. And I think, in your professional opinion, you think it's going to hurt our Black and brown students. Damn, that's going to be a tough and important conversation, right? Like, let's have that.
Dr. Cuellar and the superintendent brought to us in the spring, before Herman and Gary were on, a very bold and audacious plan to make some profound differences for our Black and brown students. And it was our teachers union that was not willing to make the necessary changes. And we were in a very, broken relationship with the pandemic and everything. And so we didn't feel like we could push there for whatever reason. But that's part of it, is we have had some of those conversations, but we do need to have more. One other thing I want to call out, Amy, and that came to mind when you were speaking, and some of what you said, Dr. Proctor and Dr. Adams, is we look at teachers, we have a mostly white teaching force, and we look at teachers doing their best to pull together curriculum because they didn't have the resources from the district. There's inherent bias. And so part of the reasons we see the numbers we see with our Black and Native students is that our white teachers have been doing their best without the curriculum resources, and then these are the results we're getting.
And the over-identification of special education.
And the over-identification of special education, and our low brown students are part of that.
Disciplinary rates, okay, let's.
Perfect segue, thank you.
Yes, again,
This is,
And our teachers are doing their best. Like,
Yes,
I'm
they
not
are.
blaming teachers, I'm not anti-teacher, but this is some of the fruit we've borne out of the practices we've had for the last 30 years.
And I do want to say, and please forgive
Go
us,
ahead,
I think this is what you're,
I think
this is what you want us
I'm
to
just
do.
trying to let you get to it.
This is what you want us to do.
That's important.
If you don't mind. So, but what also, when the Office of Teaching and Learning partnered with MTC to do the instructional reviews, and we're continuing to partner because we want more than one viewpoint, the question really was, what is the teaching and learning experience of children here at PPS? So when we did these classroom walkthroughs, when we did the school visits and we went in with the teams, it was really to experience and to see and to take note of what children are experiencing. But what we have to realize is that children are not, when we talk about the gaps of learning, when we talk about the impact that the pandemic had on our children, I'm a lover of children, but I'm a lover of teachers as well. Yes, it had a great impact on our children, but it also had an impact on our teachers.
Yes.
The same way we talk about, for example, an 8th grade middle school student had not been in school when we went face to face, had not been in school in 2 years, and had not been, so here they are at the end of their middle school experience, having now never set a foot into the building. We have first year teachers. It was their first year teaching when the pandemic started. They had not experienced teaching in this fully robust way that those of us who's been in education for like 22 years, like myself, really know what the beauty of teaching can be. They have not had that experience. We also had probably some struggling teachers, if we're honest with ourselves, in our system that went into a pandemic with practices that they were not able to improve upon. So that's the second layer of what we see as a result of the pandemic. So we also wanted to go in and understand of what we're seeing in teacher practice, how can we then as a district, as an Office of Teaching and Learning, plan for effective professional development and training for teachers so that we can meet what we call tier 1 instructional expectations. And tier 1 is like basic, right?
Yeah.
Standards aligned instruction, right? How do we teach to a rigorous and an engaging lesson that meets the grade level expectation without watering it down, without teaching one way to one child and teaching a different way to another child, and how do we develop our teachers as well, because there's a gap. We talk about unfinished learning, but there honestly through the pandemic has been some unfinished teaching.
I 100% agree. Our
I
teachers are, I've said it before, on an airplane, they say, in case of an accident and this mask drops down, you put it on yourself, and then if you have a child with you, then you put it on the child. There's a reason for that.
That's right.
A child by themselves, you're trying to save that child, great job. But if something happens and that child needs to survive on their own, they can't, because they don't know enough to take care of you, take care of themselves, to provide for themselves. So it's absolutely imperative that you as an adult take care of you so that we can take care of the children. And we want them to be better. But our teachers, and again, I want us to, we got to push hard. I'm not saying that we got to push hard, but our teachers are just as exhausted. They are just as burnt out. They are, I mean, they too have been living in a pandemic. They, you know, like Dr. Proctor was saying, some of our teachers are first-time teachers and they still chose to teach. That within itself should say you something about, you know what I'm saying, who they are as people, because I don't like kids that much. I just don't. But they do. And so that within itself requires us to like, let's take note of that. And we have to figure out a way that we can give them the tools that they need so that they can be successful, push them so that, no, we believe that you can give us more, but then also know when we need to back off, like, okay, this is too much for right now. So we're gonna give it to you 6 inches at a time, and then that's how we're gonna get you across the floor. So, but we gotta push. So we gotta be
our task
intentional.
really is, and as a former turnaround principal of a majority black school, I think our school leaders, understand this. Our task is to create and nurture the conditions in every one of our school communities so our teachers can thrive, our students can thrive. And so, and the game board has changed on us in the middle of this. So now we've really got to make sure and so make clear our expectations, provide the tools, support our educators, grow our educators and our leaders, and create those on-ramps for our students with all those tools in place.
So I'm gonna go back to what Director Scott was saying, right? And because I'm looking at the stuff that you're talking about is operational stuff. That's what you guys do, right? So what I'm asking or proposing that going on with Director Scott was saying, can you formulate a list of stuff at the board level we need to do? Whether it's some audacious plan or controversial plan or whatever that is, so that way we can have something, so we can say, okay, you know what, this makes sense, and then we get behind that and we move forward. A lot of this, like Herman said, Director Green was saying, a lot of stuff is a lot of talk and stuff. I'm just about action, right? Let us know what we need to do, and then as a responsible board, we need to go out and do that. In order to get these numbers to where they need to be in the future for our kids. But this is all about our kids. It's not about anything else. It's about our kids. And if we're not willing to go through the fire, we're not willing to step in front of a bullet for our kids, then we don't need to be here, period.
Gary, to a certain extent, I think what you're describing is our budget. And especially now that we frame our budget in terms of our vision and referencing our board goals, and now in terms of our strategic plan. So it's like, this is where we said we're trying to go. This is what I need.
Yeah, and I think the budget is part of it, but what I hear is labor negotiations.
Yeah.
What I hear is other cultural and environmental things that needs to happen. So I think the budget is one, but I think we need to more than just look at the money piece. We need to look at everything in its entirety in order to start moving the needle. It was the same that I seen that everybody want to get back to normal. But normal wasn't okay.
No.
So this is an opportunity now to literally do something different. And the way I feel about it is those that want to go, they go with it. And those that not, they're not. And we just move on because our kids is at stake here.
I think our data clearly shows that normal was not okay.
It's not
at all. It makes, yeah.
I don't want to cut anybody off because this is a great conversation, but I'm wondering if this would be a great time for a break. I've been,
I'm
my Fitbit.
Yeah,
and
I'm trying to wrap up so we can do that, and I'm gonna get out of your way so you can keep this going.
Yeah.
When we get into the small groups, Director Hans, I encourage you to think about how do we translate what you just said into core business.
Yes.
Because
Because we're talking about agenda setting.
we're talking about agenda setting for 2022.
Yes.
So this is exactly the kind of thing that I would love for you all to discuss and write down ideas and propose for future agendas. And then, by the way, take some stuff off the list that is on there that we don't think is really worth it. Let me wrap up so I can get out of your way. Let me take a break. On the policy, back to the racial educational equity policy, the second piece is about eliminating racial predictability and disproportionality. These are what's called a risk ratio, so it's basically normalizing for the different proportions of enrollment and comparing kind of apples to apples, the rate of identification for special education. So a 1 is basically means that everyone's kind of equally identified. Less than one means that those groups are less often identified than other groups. Higher numbers mean they're more likely to be identified than the rest of their peers. So what you see is that Black students, while it's varied, in the last year, we're 30% more likely to be identified as students with disabilities than their non-Black peers. Native American students are 60% more likely. This gives you actually the PPS risk ratios compared to the national average. Really, so just not to pick on PPS, this is a national problem. It just happens that the district is generally following that national trend right now. So it's just useful information to
The
know.
fact that it's the converse are achieving.
Right.
Totally. And let me say also as a data point, I know this isn't your board goal, but I still think it's important for you to see this information. It's related, it's in your policy.
Yeah.
It's your first strategic plan theme is racial equity. So just because we have board goals, those are priorities, that's great. That doesn't mean there aren't some other things that I would encourage you to be monitoring.
I think this also calls into question us to examine and interrogate what racial equity work looks like throughout the organization. Because if it looked differently, our risk ratios would look different than the national risk ratio.
Right.
It wouldn't look the same.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
exactly it. Similar kinds of trends, but this you have to look at this kind of in the reverse because this is the risk isn't really the right term, but it's the likelihood of identification for talented and gifted. So the higher the number means they're more likely to be identified as talented and gifted than their peers. And so what you see is that white students are about twice as likely generally to be identified than non-white students. White students are 5 times more likely to be identified for talented and gifted than Black students. And that, to your point, Dr. Adams, actually is significantly higher than the national average based on some research, although the research is not quite as comprehensive on this as it is in special ed identification. In the exclusionary disciplines, so this is out of school suspension rates, at least 1 time in the school year or at least 3 times in the school year. And what you see is, again, similar trends, but primarily for Black students.
I want to point out that the only dashboard we got where the Black students have been wired in greater than the white students is in the disciplinary action.
Yep.
I was waiting for it to get here. I knew it was going to come, but the only slide where we exceed is being kicked out.
Yep.
I'm okay.
That's right.
But go ahead.
This is same kind of, this isn't a risk ratio. This is the likelihood of Black students being expelled as compared to white students. A couple qualifiers here. I wanted to share it just because it looks like it's heading in a better direction. It's a very small sample set. So the good news is you don't expel very many students in the district. It's like 9 or 10 Black students a year, I think.
Still too many.
Still too many, but I'm just saying, you got to take this data for what it is. But I wanted to show it because I think there's at least some indication that this is headed in a better trend. But again, all indicators I think are relevant and important matters for the board to be monitoring and measuring.
And perfect, Green. I mean, if I just may, I think it's all the data points. I think also reflect a little bit of culture of low expectations, right? And like, how do we think about that? Right? Because all of this data is one and the same. So like, so just for us to think about,
I got a whole other soapbox I can get on about that. And I don't think we even got time for all my soapboxes around this. Yeah, I'm sick of teachers telling, and this isn't all teachers, because I love my teachers. I love them a lot. But I'm tired of teachers telling kids, he got a C, he's passing. You get a C because you didn't come to school, start a fight, and cuss out a teacher. You'll get a C for that. I don't care if you do no work or not. You're gonna get a C for that. You get a B when you can actually do the work. You get an A when you can actually show that you can teach the work. We need to get our kids to the point where they can actually show that they can teach and not say C's get degrees, because they don't. So we need to do better all the way around.
The other thing you just pointed out about the grade is all the things you listed are not things that have anything to do with academic achievement. Those are standards, right? So the question comes up for me, should those even be impacting your grade?
Right. Or should it all be proficiency based?
That's
Extremely haphazard.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's why we need the standards. So we're all talking about the same thing.
Right.
Which is why our high school principals are in the PLC right now to talk about.
Equitable grade.
but I believe that by having good data, right, wrong, or indifferent. You know what I'm saying? It's not about making it something. It's about, it is what it is. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it is what it is. If we know where we're at, then we know what we need to do to course correct, and then we can determine what we need to do to get us where we need to be. So I am grateful for, you know what I'm saying, to be able to have it. As much as I don't like y'all for showing it, you know, you didn't do it, but you showed it to me, boy.
But we did do it.
But I'm grateful to have it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm grateful to have it, because it becomes a beacon to where if we don't do something different, then this time next year we'll be in this exact same spot talking about the exact same stuff, saying, I wish we would have done something different.
I think that's why the implementation piece is so important, right?
That's why it's so
Because I
important.
think, you know, in our public discourse about education, we always end up talking about what is the board not doing, or what is the superintendent not doing, or what is the central office not doing. But again, implementation looks like every nook and cranny in the system working in close partnership, in close relationship, right? What's happening in the classroom with the classroom teacher, what's happening with the principal in the school building, what's happening here with the superintendent.
It's all
And ultimately,
connected.
it's all connected. And I think one of the many things that the board can really help us do is how do we have that conversation in the public discourse, right? And it's not, because it's not just Guadalupe's fault that we have X, Y, and Z, or it's not just Herman's responsibility, right? But it's the collective responsibility. And I think in public narrative, it's easy to say, well, he's at fault, or she's at fault, or they are at fault. Like, it's the system, right? And until we understand each individual's role, I think we're gonna continue to do this, and the data is still gonna show that.
Well, and I
But
think that
actually, the data does reflect that us versus them mentality. That's what we're seeing right now. And so the reason we're here tonight is to align our intent with our purpose and our strategies to get to where we'd like to see those achievement scores, rise.
To piggyback, Jonathan, in a good continuous improvement cycle, you point yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, whether it's
Yes.
you individually, you and
Yeah.
your team, you and your department.
Yes.
And you say,
Yeah.
what can we do to improve
Yeah.
our practices, our capacity in order to further the goals that we all hold so dearly and collectively?
And I think that's what, when you said it's something about it's not our fault or we didn't do this, we did do this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think one of the first exercises I had at board retreat, Amy, when you were chair, was when AJ asked us to talk about what is our role? What did we do? How did we live? What are the choices we've made that have led to this gap? And I thought about my work as a white parent in a school advocating for my kids in a way that didn't think about equity, right? And so I think that's one of the things that's really easy to say, well, we're a new board, we didn't do this, we haven't been in charge for 20 years. But this is our problem. This is our sort of collective, and we've all played roles. We've all done things in our community and in our society that have led to this disparity. So how do we take that responsibility and totally point the finger at ourselves and say, what am I going to do differently? How am I going to think differently? And shift that and take ownership as a board. It's really easy to blame, Scott and Rita for everything because they're not on the board anymore. But how do we, I'm just being silly.
I thought we gotta do that.
Yeah, it's all Scott and Rita's fault. Everything that was bad was all Scott and Rita.
That's why you never leave the board.
Right. Stay on, so we can't blame her, but, we have to take that responsibility. We are the board now, we are the district, and so we can't say the district is bad because we are the district.
Right.
We have to say, yeah, the district is bad and we're, that's on us and we're doing something about it.
Go ahead. So I'm reminded of that all the time, is that it might not have been my fault, but it's been my responsibility to move forward. And so, I take that as, I don't care what happens, and that's why I was trying to push for like, what do we need to do moving forward and let's go forward. It's because if not, it was it's my responsibility right now. And it's a decision that I took, and I have to own it. And so I can't be absolved of the past because I'm here. And we just got to do better and do something.
I think the interesting piece about the board's role is communicating with the community about why things need to change. Because a lot of these decisions that, are superintendent and you, when you are telling us these are really important to achieve our goals, are going to upset the apple cart. And that's gonna fall back on us, because we're gonna get the 200 emails and we're gonna be held accountable for the decisions that we do or don't make. I mean, Rosa Parks was a great example of that. You were, because I appreciated what you said, Andrew, when you said that superintendent, you need to make it really obvious to us that what you're asking for is in service to one of these strategies. You know, don't assume that we necessarily know that about everything, like make it really clear. And you did do that with that calendar change, which was like a very minor issue. And yet there was community pushback, and you know, people to greater or lesser degrees feel influenced by that. And so I would be interested as a board in having that kind of conversation at some point.
Can I pick up on that? You know, the Rosa Parks, I was thinking about it the exact same example, because it was illustrative of, you know, it's not like every decision is going to be that one advances racial equity and that one doesn't. And this was a situation where we had a superintendent saying, this is going to be better for the students of color at that school. And you had Black members of the community, you had teachers at that school, and others saying it won't. And so as a board, that was one of those moments where we came to it from different places, and there was a split vote. But we had to sort of say, okay, wait, we got one side saying this is going to advance racial equity, and the other side saying it's going to harm racial equity. We had to make a hard decision.
Right.
And then it's going to be on this guy's why I don't want his job. 2 years later and say, you know, okay, you supported me, you know, and I've shown you the difference, or to have the ability to come back 2 years later and say, yeah, you know what, it didn't work out just the way I thought. So the hard decisions are really the ones.
Yeah.
And to George's comment, I think that's exactly what we need. We need someone who's willing to say, you know what, this is gonna happen, and they have enough intelligence to be retrospective of that decision and say, you know what, well, based on these numbers, it worked, based on it didn't work, and then you move on, right? You know, nobody's here because we know what the answer, we knew what the answer is, we wouldn't be here, right? So, and we have to make sure, and the superintendent and needs to have that board backing to say, you know what, I wanna try this. And if it doesn't work, then it just don't work. And we try something else and we pivot and we move. But we can't, we have to be able to have that board strength in order to do that, because what we've been doing for decades and decades is not working. And I can defend that against anybody. Hey, you show me something else that's working better and we'll go with that.
We'll do it.
Right? And so, but until we have what we need, we're gonna keep trying stuff, we're gonna keep doing stuff, we're gonna keep trying to figure it out.
Everybody wants things to be different, but nobody wants to change.
Right.
Okay. I love what's happening right now. We're gonna keep going forward together. Let's take a brief break, eat some food if you haven't gotten there yet. We're a little behind now.
Oh, that's all right, it's a good one.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So when you come back, is 15 minutes okay?
Yes,
Okay, so let's come back at, so that's
22.
7:22. Just one quick thing, I'm gonna rearrange, so there's gonna be 4 tables in the corner. They're gonna be labeled tables 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 3rd page of your agenda packet is where you should go for rotation 1, so if you all could just get there. Yeah, I guess, yeah, if you keep your things with you, yeah.
Oh, what table should we go to?
So rotation 1 is where you should end up when we're done with the break.
Okay,
So after break, I go to table 1?
Yep.
Okay,
okay.
But I gotta give you a minute to set them up, so.
okay.
That's better.
So.
So just a quick introduction, and I'm gonna let you all dig into this.
Go ahead.
Oh, this is great.
Appreciate it. So just a quick recap on the board evaluation we did before last retreat. There's a very consistent theme from both staff and board around wanting to focus on measurable performance, board members, as the top area to work on getting better at. Staff wanted the board to stay in their lane and focus on outcomes, not other non-essential things. These were like multiple comments, themes.
That's true.
September board retreat feedback, same thing. A lot of people said in their comments, want more focus on measurable performance data, determine how the board will monitor outcomes. So this is why we have this agenda. I'm going to propose a couple things to you. So we're going to dig into some potential agenda items. I'm going to let Chair DePass and Superintendent Guerrero talk about a little bit of background quickly on where these things came from. I'm going to propose 3 essential criteria for you to consider as you look at these agenda items and discuss them together. One is, what's the proper role of the board? I'm going to propose to you it's these 6 things. These 6 things are also listed on the second page of your agenda packet. So you don't need a copy now. They're on the agenda packet, the one that has the table assignments on it. You'll see the 3 criteria. You'll see the board roles, you'll see the strategic planning themes, and you'll see the board goals. There's a recap. Second page is the agenda packet with the agenda on the front. So I'm going to suggest that take a look at these things for the board roles. I think it'll be hard for you to think of things that are outside of these walls of the sandbox. Does anyone feel strongly that otherwise?
The one thing that's missing, the big thing that's missing here is the labor contract approvals.
Yep.
And also, just our role as the, oversight of the auditing plan and.
Okay. Auditing different than the financial audit?
It's a performance
Yeah,
audit.
it's performance
Okay.
audit, and they report to the board.
Okay, so let's also consider, I guess I could add that as a 7th, like, I don't know what you call it, but like mandatory,
And that's in that. Yeah.
it's in your focus areas, yeah. So okay, fair enough. There's probably some mandatory either by law or policy compliance duties. But those you're not really have a choice about anyways, right? So these are going to be more of the discretionary roles. Fair enough. Okay. The agenda setting policy on your board policy right now states that agenda items for general discussion, which is what we're going to be looking at tonight, will be established jointly by the board chair and the superintendent, but that requests for placing the items can be submitted. So the purpose of tonight is to sort of get ahead of that, consider with this whole group potential agenda items, but they're ultimately, in terms of the structure of this, going to be presented for your policy to the board chair and the superintendent to make final calls on. This is a way for us to solicit input from everyone in the room, so that it's hopefully inclusive.
May I just point out an observation that I'm not sure if this is in our onboarding package or not, but there's also a knowledge gap, in terms of, when you're new, we're onboarded, we get an ethics training, but I think that like knowing how to move work forward, knowing how to contribute to the agenda is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I can just say, I hear from maybe 2 or 3 people.
I'll be in one, I tell them myself, please, somebody point me out.
So,
And
because
also-
if you don't know that, like I didn't know that. I've gotten an invitation every other week to.
And I know that
participate.
Roseanne did do an extensive did a couple of days, more than just the ethics on topic, but
Right.
quite a bit of other stuff for
My
us
question
and
is this on here? As a new board member, I had no idea that this is how, if there was an agenda item that I could contribute.
Part of what I'm showing you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
That was something I shared, and I think about like there's a first day you get a lot of information.
Yeah.
Before you even think of people.
Yeah.
So
It's overwhelming.
it's,
And Roseanne does do a good job of sending out those weekly emails saying agenda setting is
Yes.
tomorrow, if you have any items, please, yeah.
or it's in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's in 10, every once in a while it's in 10 minutes, normally
Yeah.
it's the night before, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a critique, it was just a question or comment. that it could be added if it wasn't already in or not wording. That sounds like it is.
Yeah, and I know Roseanne said that procedure for both as well.
I think like for me, there was so much information that we were taking in. It's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? And you're trying to get so much information, and then you're trying to like, okay, settle down. We're here now. I don't have to, be trying to figure out what to do. Is the posturing and all that stuff. We're here now. Okay, thank you. Let's go. And then you're constantly, even though we get the messages that that Roseanne is sending out, we're still constantly being bombarded with a bunch of other emails and stuff every day about this and that. I feel like it would be good as far as like the agenda stuff goes. And especially when you're talking about the agenda and our committee, like the committees, if you want to move something in a committee, this is what it needs to look like. This is what you need to do. This is how you get it done. This is when you get it done. Like a step 1, step 2, step 3 type of deal, like moving something forward in committees for dummies.
Yes.
Put me there because that's what I need. I literally had to call, I called Michelle, I called Julie. I'm like, I'm gonna do. Like,
I think so.
somebody need to tell me
That's
something.
That's another one of what I'm calling a knowledge gap that is very hard to participate as a board member if you're not sure how to show up and move forward. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I get it.
And some people know it and some people don't know it.
Right.
It's just,
And it's okay to, I think we need to get comfortable letting people know up front so that people, it's okay to be able to say you don't know something. We need to get comfortable saying, I don't know
Board
this.
norm number 5.
And so that's, that I just, yeah.
Thank you.
For
So in each of these 4 tables, you have a different list. Tables 1 through 3 has 3 different chunks of what we've been referring to as the Willamette list. I'm not sure if everyone knows what that list is. So I want to pause. I don't know if the superintendent, if you want to share any background about where that came from or.
I think that was just a group of senior staff in the conference room, and we were kind of lesson planning for the week, all that needed to be done, and it was a quick brainstorm around, well, what are all the things what are all the plates that we have spinning right now in the midst of this pandemic? I'm sure it's not exhaustive, I'm sure it doesn't include everything, but it was just a quick exercise to show, this is why it feels like we run out of time every day after 12 hours, because there is a lot on the plate.
Yep. So not an official document, not an exhaustive document, starting point, something to work with. I'm going to have you all essentially work together. One person at the table is going to fill out that one single worksheet. You're going to use.
This guy ain't
Yeah, preferably someone with some. I'm going to translate it all and summarize it so we have good interview. You're going to go through each item, discuss it together, try to use the board goals, the board roles, and the strategic plan themes, which we're going to read in a minute as the sort of primary litmus test for relevance in matters of governance. And then decide as a group, do you want to keep it, do you want to modify it, do you want to take it off? Just skip it. Just skip it. So if you don't understand them or they don't seem relevant, skip it.
But it just came,
You know, when you were
it came
school,
from
and it was
the staff work plan, so like enterprise resource planning and implementation, I don't think we're contemplating.
So my understanding of the list was there are things that the staff thought that the board was pushing for. If it's not, maybe it's okay.
Okay. Is that the case for other things?
Not entirely.
Okay.
There might be work strands that staff is working on that you might not have visibility in. The enterprise work might be an example of that. There's a whole lot of work going on we need to brief the board on at some point. It's about the infrastructure of our systems in the school district. Right?
So a great reason why you have staff and board together, because some staff may have better viewpoints on some of those things than others, than board members. It's okay if you all are in agreement like this is a staff thing, then remove it. It's not a board item. Okay? That's totally fine. So no big deal. And then if you get through that quickly and you want to go to the back, there's an empty brainstorm for the things that we were talking about in the first one, right? About things that how you want to focus the board's attention through agenda items, whether it's a report you want to receive, a discussion you want to have, like we started to in the curriculum, whatever. And again, these are all going to be compiled as ideas for Chair DePass and Superintendent Garrison trying to decide what's going to go on the board work plan that Roseanne's going to update. The fourth table has excerpts from your work plan, Roseanne, which is a draft, but it's only the things that aren't mandatory or aren't already on the Willamette list. I just did that first, just to try to avoid duplication and things. So it's on table 4 on your worksheet.
Oh, on the list.
Yeah,
It's on table 4, yes.
so I just plucked out all the things that aren't on the table.
Oh, so each table has a different
You all
set
different
of
lists.
things from the list.
Yep.
That was,
Sorry,
Yeah.
I know there's a lot here. Yeah, they're all different lists.
Use with us to each table and leave the paper, right?
You're gonna need your agenda packet and the strategic plan summary.
And we leave that on each
You
table.
leave that on the table, you're gonna fill that, one of you's gonna fill that out.
Right.
Yep. One of you's gonna fill out the worksheet.
I just want to be clear on.
I'd like to hear from staff. What they think the role of the board.
We're obligated.
Whatever staff.
You know what? Sorry? No, no, no.
It's right
No,
there.
if we can decide one. Okay, well, if we could just, there's a question.
Oh,
So before we get started, it'd be helpful for me to understand what staff thinks is the board's role with the strategic plan.
Okay.
I can rewind to a previous Saturday board retreat we had. We had this conversation. Administration's interest is to be transparent about what we think, what strategies or activities will get us to the board goals, right? So we're saying, these are the levers we're gonna pull. We wanna be open about what it is or the things that we're gonna focus on. We'll share with you periodic progress reports about where we're getting traction, it's iterative. So from a management point of view, that's how we orient our work, which is what we're endeavoring to do next as a staff, to really sort of have that be our how we spend our time and effort. So the board goals is to be aware of what are the high leverage strategies, how are we sequencing them, which ones are we focused on. They should be informing why we make a budget proposal annually, because they have to support the activities that are in there. So
it's primarily to be informed.
Monitor, not manage. That's the theme. So I'm gonna give you all first, 10 minutes of quiet reading time. There's a packet, there should be 4 on the table that says summary of strategic plan, themes and outcomes. This is an excerpt straight from the strategic plan. It's very summary level. There are gonna be things that aren't fully fleshed out. This is just a first look. It's okay if you don't fully understand all the details, but this is just a high level summary. So I'm gonna give you 10 minutes for each of you independently to just read through that and digest it.
On the bright side, there's yeah.
Achievement goals are.
Somebody has to. Ask the president.
So yes. It's a complete evaluation is an instrument for the student. It's achievement goal. Yes. Keep learning.
What is the direct?
Indicate references to keep the number of information, including
Like for a board.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it needs to be this. This is the first person.
So as you shift into one person filling out the worksheet, feel free to use, this is meant to be a useful tool, so like in the notes, you could say ERP one update a year. You could say deprioritize until 2023. However you want to just indicate its importance, use it for what's right.
So we're supposed to be discussing grants for.
He's writing something. Yeah. Shows.
There's board roles, I read that wrong. Yeah, if you already did board roles.
You're on the board goals.
Indicate whether you're supposed to keep, remove, or modify. Okay, so the first one is the board self-evaluation. Does it relate to the strategic plan? Okay, so that's this. So what are you? This is from the work plan.
It can be shared based on something.
We're going through this worksheet that Ben gave us, which are based on the work plan.
So what is this?
And we're supposed to answer those 4 questions. Strategic plan,
Prioritize
role, how will we make or modify the Yeah.
Strategic plan.
Oh, she's got it,
Okay.
I'd say you're right, it's loose.
Yeah. Okay, just support self-evaluation. Is it clearly related to monitoring the students? I would say.
It needs to be achievable.
Is the board self-evaluation clearly related
So
to
you
job
can
performance?
it's related. Yeah. Reading more. Yeah, I would say.
So, the one note that I saw is that one of our other standards is data-driven continuous improvement practices, evidence, integrated buzzwords, the person.
That's true.
And I think that the board self-evaluation is the board's sort of continuous improvement plan. So that would be the one place, it's not related to the monitoring yet, but it does link into the CIP practice. This goes to well, and are we doing this like thing in our governance line? Are we, like, how are we evaluating ourselves? So I would say no, it's a monitoring, but it does have value related to it.
It's still progress.
Or something,
You go outside the line.
Board goal, no. You say yes. But then, yeah. Self-monitor.
But you just
It's, yeah, it's not very time, so keep.
It's just like informational.
10 years ago, we didn't use.
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're learning.
Or I think just like.
One probably wasn't very good.
School district improvement.
Are we gonna have to? One movie of last few years. But then we never talked something different.
Right, no, so I say like, what we should do
Strategic plan.
That's what it was.
Okay, so,
We'll do next one, do another.
It's all in the same.
We're talking about.
Yes, stand.
Well, that's what we've been pushing is for integrated programs. After we're doing that.
So part of what they need to do is.
Alright, long range facilities.
We need to isolate for.
Well, for strategic,
Build up
is it a
staff.
hard story?
And
No,
then
it's
it's gonna be, they have to pushback from the community.
Really related to.
And my response was, what did Dr. O say? So Dr. O said, we need to isolate, environment and isolate. So that was my response.
Well, and that also goes to differentiate learning and do our thing.
I think it's one of those compliance experientialized. Is that like that?
As I said,
It doesn't, I mean, I don't think they can, I mean, I just all of these sort of really support goals, but not
What about classes?
There's a whole thing in here on activity.
isolation project.
There's still,
Okay, so I'm just saying board kind of for board. Anybody want to say anything else about that?
Wait, yes,
Is that really a strategic plan?
It hasn't come back.
Oh, you're fine.
I do, I mean, I struggle sometimes when the board members say, well, my community says this. Because it could be used as a friend, right? Like, so it's not as, I mean, I think you just build on power when we, so I think that that's important, and I think we do need.
Yeah, the right milestones.
Saying, my community helps, so this thing, how we do that.
What's today? Is it the hardest?
Right, or, yeah, my concern.
Is like,
And it's not like, it's just like. It's just like, I wasn't saying like, setting a strong good, it's just like, that's what we're.
Yeah, and I felt shit to them too.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I kept in the executive session when we talked about.
Is that camera automatically moving around the room? Or is it? It's like sensing activity.
I think what works, it does both features. They're really designed to be used in function.
Yeah.
So the teacher may
That's my own. Yeah, it's a little. I sat over here and I watched it fall. It's like, oh. Yeah, it's doing it. Yeah. Well, I barely moved.
That's necessarily a picture.
and then stop. And then
Let's figure out how it works.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like, we heard you our goals and our
It's on the other side.
We're already used to
I see the board activities.
We're gonna have to.
We don't have to do it.
And then the board really, that's about more than those.
Oh, we can see that as a goal. Stability.
It's not as specific.
Or else it's just a start over. Well, we might be looking at a
Working those things, but not.
higher.
So we keep.
Like the policy committee.
So then we don't, we have to review that thing.
This is all.
I was just, there are functions.
Again, if we get switched to the
Yes, it is.
And I think more,
It's
it doesn't
one of
really
those
right.
And it's
I want to get something we don't have to
You can
go.
also be individuals because the board goals are supposed to.
Right.
Right. No, we don't.
I don't want to get there, but it's also.
Just those.
22,
I guess the idea is
to clearly play the monitoring and clearly related to board goals.
How does that show up on?
Besides just time. Even sign up for
Which is, which I just, and yes, it's really our role and sort of.
Does that need to be for ongoing?
But I think we
Right, that's not a staffing. I mean, I guess it is.
But it is, like, some students, you
Based on this, so you're looking at, based on this one, you're gonna increase this. How is the development, because it's not even in. So this is, then you can do those things, but it's not doing it.
We don't adopt it, so what's the and I noticed it's operational.
Board goals are.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, is there a better way to
This is
No, but then it goes to community and it just.
It's not, I'm saying that's it.
I mean, they're related to the goal, but that's not really what we're using, maybe as a board like this.
Not what's listed.
The same board role. But it's just what, for us.
The monitoring.
Was the monitor and
Yes.
are not accepted on the alignment? Because alignment is the next job, right?
How many of those?
Is it, have you seen that?
So this is not just add that.
But that's what this is. So how many of those were part of the strategic plan?
Okay, annual student investment accounts.
How many of those?
So, yeah.
Just about, I think you all got a little earlier start, so you know, get some reading at different paces.
That's a job. It's not hard. Plan.
We're coming up on 20 minutes, so.
Well, I guess the board role 4 is really just the policy committee, right? Because we don't.
It's not necessarily.
I think that's where we're trying to have it. Yeah, it is. For itself, that's I'm like,
We just monitor the budget. Do we really monitor the budget?
So, no, we can provide, adequate strategic direction.
Like, just one of because then say how is I mean, that if you don't be enough. I mean, they're all not. You can tell us.
Make sure you're in alignment with that.
The stuff that she the stuff that she
Well, for us.
Yes, that was.
We have to say, which ones, of the 4 areas, compared to the four goals, clearly put one of the 6 other goals, roles.
I can't.
5 more minutes. This sounds like.
The students.
I know. So this is our brainstorming,
I am a student.
If you this, if I came to the board meeting and if every board meeting y'all were hitting on this, I'd be so ecstatic out of my
When you say
I'm doing something else.
So it could be both, we could be when I talk about instructional, we elementary math. Discussions about and more data or what trends do we see?
Yes, yes. Was the set.
The steps start.
So then we see what priorities.
Yeah.
I needed to see.
Oh, when you talk about assessments, the teachers like testing something else, 2 things aren't aligned, and then the teacher, because they're focused, the teachers focused.
It's psychic.
But
But overall,
And then she could based on students who on this, and then she could say.
Yeah, we definitely have actions in our.
say that we're gonna increase the growth, we're gonna be working for that. It's like
I have family in Chicago, so
Well, it did, so it's fine.
That's right, and that's why I said, maybe start where we're at now, all the changes.
So, have you made a decision? I missed something with the Northwestern part, so let's go.
no, I was gonna do about.
We can say,
With 1 minute, I'm trying to read what's lost.
You got family and stuff? Cause I heard that come up. Man, I need y'all. I heard that, you slipped. But I caught you. It slipped, I heard it. Yeah, so there's other reasons. Yeah, this is what we.
So,
Everywhere.
NYU, how many boys you found setting, and how many counts times the we want this, and none of it is impacting a token that they put up there saying second this, to try to move the needle. It was like I don't see past that. I started reading it. The soup gave me the book and then we did it.
I'm considering going into
Okay. We're going to complete. So, just one quick thing before you move. I promise I did my best to try to randomize and mix. In some cases, it might not be perfect. The permutations were kind of a brain freeze or a headache to figure out. So, if you're still almost saying people
you didn't put us all together with black folks.
we go ahead and rotation too.
Every time.
Just say.
Good work.
Break. I'm staying with Sarah. Julia.
Better tie your shoes.
Everyone's right here.
Yeah.
Everyone's right here.
Here's the table numbers up here too, if you lost your sheet.
You're the man for that.
My God.
It's a condition of grant.
Yes, I appreciate it. I'm so glad you did.
How's it going?
What we got going on today?
I know, we really.
Pretty dressed.
What? Okay.
Well, we did the last one.
Yes. What are we talking about?
Want me to be our scribe cat?
Oh, no, then they take it away and they give you a new one.
Okay, self-explanatory solution. Is it?
Oh, you gave a new one to that table?
Yeah.
Ah, so we can go there.
How you got to do
Self-explanatory
that?
solution, clearly related to monitoring.
Is that
You missed it. All right, climate justice. Oh, sorry. I know you're going. So, I did this one, so everyone knows where it's going. So we're talking about Southeast
Board roles, yes. Mission critical, right?
Is it clearly related to the board role?
Embrace and change.
I don't even know what it is. So I'll start thinking about the car rental. I'm like, so do we get different discounts?
But doing.
No, it's not the main one.
It's not required.
Board roles.
Looking at verses. Right, six.
No, but I think.
No, that's an operation.
Oh, you don't have to. No, that's
No,
fine.
no.
Okay, you don't have to.
And I think it's like our vision, so the board should hire the role.
Shall I just say really brief strategic plan? It is in the text. It monitors which people.
It's like a block.
Is there an agenda maybe?
Right, so, but it's a big ticket or,
Do you want principal
oh, so
set
then it,
You know, I was.
so then we don't need to.
It doesn't talk about.
So you wanna do what we just talked about, is accepting their recommendations and then not implementing the like
Options are. Still process these things. There's the sort of.
Well,
So,
they're not,
the
they're only
strategic,
on our
staff.
calendar, on our calendar, so we'll get that later. We'll monitor them. It's a month. First one was principal, first one was workforce diversity, second was
It's hard to work based on the list that we have. And is it a big role based on the list? So, we keep modified to 2022.
right, on diversity.
I mean, also there would be. Staff. Yes, I mean, do your thing, this is where you might have some. It sounded like. Oh, just thinking. Just thinking. Just thinking.
Annual.
Did you?
It does talk about staffing and then.
You're talking about workforce diversity?
Yeah.
Very fast.
It's in the strategic plan.
So it says develop a diverse, develop a diverse, high quality environment work in. So I actually wrote a question.
This part of like the commercial.
Yeah.
For that.
It is.
Does this,
So those are the things we
the
wrote.
state that I'm referring to, right? It says develop, and I'm just looking at keywords.
It is policy.
It says develop, and then the first line, and this says we have. So,
You remove
We're gonna have that, we have, that, so it's gonna.
okay, so then, that, so it partly is part of it.
Do we have any?
Part of our.
Okay. You were just a-
Anything else we wanna say?
Oh, it's something to
That-
talk about sponsorship. All right,
Next
so
one is teacher pathways.
labor
which is pretty much
relations
the
and
same.
contract negotiations, is that part of the strategic plan? From a staffing standpoint?
Yes.
No, it's three different things. So the first one is the labor and contract. Is that part of the
Well, I was gonna say,
Yeah, so mine.
just a second. Okay. I'm gonna stop the share for a second, just to send an email. Is that all right? Some feedback, sir.
So labor relations, you believe is a board?
Middle school board members.
So because of this criteria, because of line item number 2, that makes it a board. Okay.
Is it a part of higher supervisor?
Is it a board, does it need a board vote? And so then, so the strategic plan, so you're saying yes or no, it's either in the strategic plan. I didn't see labor relations, like that.
Yeah.
Which the board goals.
Well, it's gonna be part of like what y'all got to do. No, I don't know.
So we can say really clearly, no more goals in implementation.
So you guys should have a break.
But very much the word is like.
The board role.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. That makes sense. It might impact the strategic plan.
Sorry.
Maybe what we're saying is if the labor relations and contract negotiations.
That's when it's done.
Yeah, that's design. When you talk about alignment, that's the work of the office.
Yes, and
That's not
So you're
you
saying.
see how she just flexed on us? You see how she just flexed on us? I'm gonna put a note over here on the side. Yeah, Ashley. Yes, ma'am.
So I guess it's no.
All working. I'm gonna put down that, the only staff person.
Okay, so you need some of this, but as far as.
That, it could impact, that we believe that it could impact, the strategic plan.
Not necessarily on an agenda. I mean, just like, wait, why am I talking, why am I not talking? It's like, we should have like, could this be an email? You know?
Center for Modern Excellence, Center for Black.
Yeah, cause I'm tired of that. Oh my goodness. I'm done with this.
Next is No, it's all good conversation. What do you think, Bernard?
Because.
Okay, so is that part of the strategic plan? I would say, yeah. And then I'd say, it's not a board.
It's very student centered, yes. Well, like for example, the period of time we had this distinction between board meetings
So.
So then,
that were just confirming, and they really about.
Like a workshop to update.
I mean, it's just related. I'm gonna put it differently.
so then you can say, school, my teacher is done. I'm on the mindset. It would. So, I just know that.
To say it's a fine before. Yeah.
So I said, yes, it's in the plan.
Yeah.
I don't need to just. Yes, in our role.
Now, maybe modify, right? I mean, you know, would be versus. To address.
Although it's not really, right now, we don't really have.
Things like that, maybe have, you know.
Or modify so that you can get the right dates.
Yeah. We haven't had a simple. Implementation and analysis, assessment, analysis.
That's a little different world than
Yeah.
This is the role to implement and analyze.
Because he says, that's
Not implement. Well, it's not our role to analyze either, but digest.
I like, I mean, we don't get
I'm saying the wrong thing. I said yes to the policy. Super user modified for 22.
Don't really have, we don't.
If you want to skip that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it's important. Okay. Craig, so, on strategic plan.
But what does it have to do with what we're talking about?
Yeah, no, I
School district improvements.
board role.
Oh, this is a, oh.
Is that a thing? That we like a compliance thing? Well, like a school, like a district, is that like
Could be your strategic.
So when is this currently?
Yeah, money. I mean,
You know, your strategic plans have a specific goal.
Well, that it's not.
And
It's like, I was
Just make a foundation policy.
so, but yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
And that is it a rule of the context of, is it a rule of the
to my son.
So some of these, there's some compliance issues.
You threw me off when you started talking about this,
Does come on.
But does the, is it the goal
It's okay. We have our first thing.
Needs to get done. Just get done. So that he can got out to the is that the good mistake?
So
We have to go.
Bond modernization questions.
We have to back it up.
Strategic plan, yes. Yes, so we have that oversight responsibility.
About spaces.
Yes. Yes. Inclusive, like, so, like, for example, next week we have RDA. We're all coming to, not next week. Next week.
Intentionally going out to our.
we're gonna wrap up in 2 minutes.
Talking about this is what's happening.
No, it is, there's inclusive learning spaces. We have differentiated. Yeah, and all our systems instructors, of course, understanding and implementation of practices for student diversity, so bond funded. We have one.
But this name is inclusive,
I was just reading this today because I was helping with the resolution for the ADA thing. That part's all.
This is, it's a, that's what
This is, there's a few little names.
systems instruction has to be visible. Systems instructors to support, understanding and implementation, inclusionary instructional.
Right, but it's still, we're in math.
For students, very, for students who just.
Those town halls.
The people on the stairs who are trying to.
I mean,
I don't want to contribute to.
Yeah.
Misunderstanding.
I don't know. I mean,
I'm just talking about the strategic.
so maybe in the creation of the strategic plan, that was not those were
I like that.
but they're bases that I think you can see.
In here, and this is.
Talking about
That's one of the dimensions.
Where do you feel like they?
I think the next one though.
So you feel like it needs to be more than annual?
Well, I had a special education. I know what's happening. Okay.
I think we're all on the same page. We won.
Okay, one more minute.
Racial equity. Labs in terms of.
Are we gonna prioritize for modernization?
Kind of. I have a different lens because I was immersed in development of the strategic plan, so I don't have any, I don't know marks. So I actually read some changes, something was intended or not intended. Then I just think it is, I mean, I agree that it is in both those places, so. It's funny, because I was just thinking about this today, because we're just working on a resolution for the ADA transition plan. And, thinking about, wanting to tie it back to our vision and our strategic plan. And our values. I don't know, it's kind of a wrap up. But you guys feel strongly it's not about modernization, it's not reference to initiatives.
So that's
Yeah.
So they
Yes.
like
And no, split decisions.
I don't know.
Financial oversight. Well, right, we don't have to know.
I know Amy is.
Well, it's not true that we don't have a role in implementation, we also have
So they would have to, so they would have to bring Ted to the.
Gives us the authority to go
Right.
To the rest of the board.
I don't know, there's a lot there, because there's also our contract, you see. That isn't a board.
Okay, all, can we come back together?
I do think there's quite a
Look at
bit
this on your section, I'm gonna talk about, I would say approve or.
of modernization now. And we don't spend very much time.
It's all, this one kind of closes out.
So.
I need yours.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Committee.
Which would be small.
I know, nice. Anything else you guys want to say there?
Hold on. And,
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanna, we didn't wanna try to end early, I know it's been a long day for everybody. We're not gonna get to 4 rotations, but it's okay, we got some good feedback here, and some really healthy conversations, I thought, so.
how does it relate?
I'm sorry, you're welcome.
If you can hear.
Yeah. The last thing I would, ask, and I'll get your feedback and takeaways through the survey, is if you could just, before you leave, do that right now, in the next 5 or 10, it really should be 5. I emailed it to all the PDS emails. If you can't get that on your phone or your computer, also the web address is on the agenda. You can type it in on your phone or computer. I know it's kind of a letter scramble, but I'd love to just make sure I get everyone's feedback right now.
So are we not gonna do 3 and 4?
We're not now.
Okay. Well, that's, you're honoring your commitment.
Yeah. I think we got some feedback.
I felt like this.
She is so flexible. She is so flexible, so hard.
A couple other large.
Just keep the ship moving. Oh my God.
Our agenda.
All right, oh, this is
giant.
What's the?
We're done, yeah.
They're not,
Feedback, please. Feedback, it's in your email, it's on the agenda.
I'd like to stay.
Y'all have been,
So.
so y'all still, are y'all still meeting like five times a day? 5 times? Yeah, I would agree.
You started at 14.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I mean,
No, yeah, we used to have like executive sessions that started at 11:30.
It's not.
Yeah, I-
So, I think so.
You know what, there's. Go ahead.
Actually, let me just say two last things, and then I'll wrap up. The next steps, y'all, I forgot to mention. I'm gonna compile all of this. I'm gonna give it to Chair to pass and the superintendent to jointly look through and vet. And they're gonna then translate that back to Roseanne to consider the work plan revision or update. And then hopefully Roseanne can then facilitate and sharing that back out with the board. That seem good? So the idea that this is all of this input's gonna inform the board agendas for 2022. Not to say that those are gonna be fixed in stone, obviously things are gonna come up, but it's at least a starting point to kind of hopefully keep you focused.
I hope, I know I felt I was in two groups and felt like the conversation was really productive. I feel like we're at the precipice of being able to, really change what we focus on. To align all of our work, kind of pulling at the same rope. You know, we're all here because we want to see student, achievement. We want to see increases in student achievement, and so just being aware of how we spend our time, what we focus on is, I feel it's been really valuable.
Well, I
So,
appreciate the privilege to be here. Really just amazed by you all. I mean, this is such a great group of people. And, you know, this was good governance.
and does,
Thanks for letting me be part of it.
thank you so much. Does Herman Director Green have an announcement or anything?
do I have any announcements? I always have announcements.
Do you wanna make a motion just for fun?
Oh, no, I didn't, well, before we make that motion for us to go home, I really just wanna thank everybody, for your full, participation, your full level of involvement, bringing your whole self, to the dialogues, to these conversations. I felt like it really enriched everything, just by being open and transparent around, this is what I'm feeling right now, and this is what needs to be said. And I just really enjoyed it. The only thing that I wish we could have done, and is something like this. If we're really saying that we want to get to know one another and really learn how to work with one another, this could have been like a weekend retreat where we come in, we have breakfast, and then we spend some time during the day working through why we're doing what we're doing, how we're going to focus on what we're doing, and then have dinner, talk, and then come back and do. We need to figure out space and time how we can do this, because the more we do these types of things and focus our conversation and dialogue, the further we're going to get in the business of the district of furthering like what it is we're really supposed to be focused on. So I appreciate it. Thank you all. And at this point, I'd like to make a motion.
Anything that you'd like to announce to everybody?
No, not that I know of, but if you tell me something that I'm forgetting.
Herman, are you pregnant?
My school board thing?
They didn't recall their people.
Oh, that I was at, I'm now part of the school board, membership.
School board partners.
School board partners. I've been accepted into that program.
It's a competitive entry and.
Yeah, it's been great. I've been able to talk to people across, all over the United States about just board governance, what we're, different, things that they didn't know when they first started, or different things that they had to learn along the way. And the crazy thing is, like the soup and all of us have been saying, all of us, all across the United States right now, are dealing with the same stuff, asking the same questions, having the same challenges in our district. And I'd say we're handling it very well, so. Yes, but yeah, I am in that. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations. Years of amazing